Stewart-Haas Racing's future is very uncertain. Junior Motorsports is interested in going Cup Series racing and could in 2025. And Chris Rice says that College Racing is not merging with Trackhouse. What's going on, guys? It's Daniel, and welcome back to our video. We got some NASCAR and other motorsports story discussed today on the channel. Let's go ahead and just show them Shrinos really quickly. We're going to start talking about Chase Elliott. As it was announced on Saturday afternoon that Chase Elliott will be running a late model race at Hickory Speedway on, I believe, Thursday, May 23rd. Chase Elliott's ran a lot of late model races. Obviously, Hickory's really close to Charlotte. Chase had this race scheduled, I believe, to my understanding, for a very, very long time. But it's going to be really fun to see him running at Hickory Speedway once again. I know a lot of fans are going to come out to that. I think it's really exciting there. And I think Chase Elliott has a really great chance and a strong opportunity to win that Hickory race later this week. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Kaylee Bryson. As Kaylee Bryson has accomplished a major feat, as she has become the first female driver to win a USAC Silver Crown race. Brady Bacon had dominated the Silver Crown race last night at Belleville, but unfortunately had an engine failure late in the event. And Kaylee Bryson held off hard-charging drivers to pick up her first win in Silver Crown competition. This is a really big deal. Kaylee Bryson I've regarded as one of the best talents in motorsports at the moment, especially in the USAC scene. She's been very close to winning races in the Silver Crown Series over the course of the last couple of years. And to be honest, it's a massive accomplishment for her. Congratulations to her on winning the Silver Crown race at Belleville. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Connor Zilisch. As Connor Zilisch won the ARCA East race at Flat Rock Park. Connor Zilisch, I believe this is his second career win in the ARCA East Series, if I'm not mistaken. Connor Zilisch is one of the best racers coming up through the motorsports world. Of course, he's won the Rolls 24 in the LMP2 class, and has also won the 12-hour Sebring in the LMP2 class as well, and nearly won in his NASCAR Truck Series debut with Spire Motorsports. Also won a main ARCA race at Dover a couple weeks ago. This is another incredible accomplishment for Connor. Looking forward to seeing him run with Junior Motorsports later this year. I think it's a huge deal for him to win this race. He's winning a lot of these races, especially with Pinnacle. Congratulations to Connor Zilisch on winning the ARCA East race at Flat Rock. It's a really massive and great accomplishment for him overall, to be perfectly honest with you. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Jay Buford. As it was announced on Friday afternoon that Jay Buford will be driving for Mike Harmon Racing in 2024, driving number 74 car for the rest of 2024. They're supposed to have a partnership announcement at some point later this afternoon. By the time you're watching this, you'll probably see this. But Jay Buford has been racing in Trans Am over the course of the last couple of years, and also a germ for Big Machine Racing, the Xfinity Series as well. He's a solid driver, in my opinion, not the greatest on ovals, but this is going to be a massive and huge opportunity for him to drive for the team. They did attempt to run at Daytona earlier this year, but I believe their owner's points went to the 32 car for Jordan Anderson Racing, and now they have no owner's points going into this weekend at Charlotte. Like I said, they're going to run a majority of races the rest of the year. It's a great opportunity for Jay Buford, though. I think it's going to be really tough for them to make it unless they're going to get some good engines. But I am so excited to see that Jay Buford is going to have the chance and opportunity to race in this event and run the rest of the year with the team. I'm looking forward to it. It's a fantastic, great opportunity, and glad to see that Jay Buford will be working with Mike Harmon Racing in 2024. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about the Imola Grand Prix. Before IndyCar and Indy 500 qualifying took place for the Fast 12 and the Last Chance qualifier and the North Vauxhall race happened, you had the Formula One race at Imola. And Max Verstappen once again picked up another win in F1. But it was very close this time around. Lando Norris has definitely caught up to the Red Bulls, especially Max Verstappen, and nearly got his second straight win in Formula One. He had a lot of pace, but unfortunately ran out of time and was very close at the end. Max Verstappen's got more competition for sure, but once again, another big win for Max Verstappen, which, by the way, I think his team won the Nürburgring in 24 hours on iRacing with Redline, if I'm not mistaken. So congratulations to them on doing that, but also massive and huge congratulations to them on winning at Imola, and a big win for Max Verstappen once again as he looks to win his fourth straight consecutive world championship in Formula One. A big deal for him to get the victory. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about NY Racing. As it was reported by Joseph Wrigley and TobyChristie.com that NY Racing is going to be returning at the Coco 600 this weekend, and JJ Lee is going to be the driver once again. JGL attempted to run the Daytona 500. Unfortunately, they failed to qualify for the Daytona 500 earlier this year, but they have ran at Las Vegas and I believe a couple other races throughout the year so far. And JGL, of course, has been the driver. There are 39 cars currently entered for the race. You have Jimmy Johnson driving an 84 car. You've also got a couple other drivers like, I believe, Timmy Hill, who will be in the 66 car this week for the Coke 600, or David Starr, if I remember correctly. And now you've got them returning once again. Obviously, if 2 more cars don't show up this week, they should be good to go to make the field. But obviously, they've had some big issues and problems on the track especially, and they've had a lack of speed. I don't think they're going to be up to pace or speed this weekend, unfortunately. But I'm glad to see that NY Racing is going to be back in the series. I'm looking forward to see JGLA back, and I think he could do a solid job if the equipment is there. He's driven them many times in the past before. We'll see if JGLA can have a good run with them at the Coke 600 this weekend. A great chance and opportunity. We'll see how he ends up doing in the Coke 600 in 2024. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about flooding. Now, if you were at North Wilkesboro, you saw the torrential downpours that took place at North Wilkesboro. That's why the Truck Series race unfortunately got postponed to earlier today or yesterday when you're watching this. They got 81 laps in the Truck Series race. They had a ton of lighting delays, and they actually had to cancel not only the Truck Series race, but also the heat races as well, because of the bad weather. They had nearly 5 inches of rain at North Wilkesboro, and pit road was completely flooded. They had hail hit the area, and they had a lot of teams working and trying to help teams like SHR who were not at the racetrack. Shout out to Hendry Motorsports for helping them, by the way. But it's really good to see teams working together to try to get these trucks and cars off of pit road and in cover as well. Again, seeing some of the pictures and images, it's absolutely wild and crazy. North Wilkesboro had a lot of rain this past week, not just for Saturday, but also I think they had rain on Wednesday and Thursday as well. It's good to see teams working together. You had a Aspire Pit Motorsports pit crew member who actually went into the puddles, if I'm not mistaken. But the fact they're able to get all that drained up is absolutely phenomenal and incredible, and good work not just by North Wilkesboro, but also the team over there as well. It's crazy some of the images I saw, though, but at the same token, at the same time, glad to see they're able to clear it up and the flooding is officially gone from the track, especially how bad it was in Chicago earlier last year. I think it was worse here than it was at Chicago. So nonetheless, crazy stuff for sure, and crazy to see all the flooding that took place at North Wilkesboro. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Brendan Queen. Now, Brendan Queen made his NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series debut earlier today and yesterday at North Wilkesboro and put up a very impressive performance. He at times had the fastest truck on the racetrack throughout the event and was able to come across the finish line in 4th place in his Truck Series debut with Tricon Garage. After the Truck Series race concluded, as he got out of his truck, he was greeted by a lot of fans giving him a standing ovation as he was basically the hero of North Wilkesboro at the Cars Late Model Tour race last year. Brendan Queen was absolutely impressive in his debut. And if I'm Tricon Garage and I'm looking at next year, especially with the possibility of Corey Heim going up to the Cup Series full-time next year, I'd be giving a call to Brendan Queen. He was absolutely impressive today. Put up a very impressive performance, had one of the best trucks throughout the event, nearly got a podium finish, and for him to finish in 4th in his debut is absolutely incredible. It is not only a win for the drivers in the Cars Late Model Tour, but it's a huge win for short track racers across the globe. And we've been seeing so many of these drivers in the Cars Late Model Tour coming in and performing well in their debuts. Carson Quaffle finished 4th in his debut and nearly won at Dover. We've seen other drivers that are making their way in, even Connor Zilic as well, who's been in the Cars Late Model Tour and has won races as well. To me, it's an amazing accomplishment for him to finish inside the top 5. And like I said, I really hope and pray that if you're looking at Brendan Queen, and if you're a team right now, Brendan Queen is a guy to hire. I hope he gets more starts this year. Obviously, it's unclear what the rest of the schedule is going to be. But like I said, I really hope Brendan Queen gets a chance and an opportunity to run in more races in this season, and hopefully he does get the chance and an opportunity to run full-time next year, because the guy's an absolute wheelman. He's an absolute beast behind the wheel, and he did an absolutely amazing and great job. Congrats on a very impressive debut for Brendan Queen, also known as Butterbean Queen. And now we're going ahead, jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Fox and NBC. As it was reported by Adam Stern on Friday evening that Fox has remained in the hunt for the IndyCar rights and has discussed a bit with people in the racing industry that has ties to a scenario plan in case that it lands a deal. But Series CEO Mark Miles says it remains a two-horse race between them and NBC. Obviously, there's been a lot of rumors and rumblings that Fox is in very big talks and discussions to try to pick up the IndyCar rights for 2025, especially with NBC really pushing to get the NBA because they're likely not going to be back on TNT. They're looking to cut a lot of things. And especially with the Xfinity Series no longer being on Fox going forward and there being less Cup Series races, Fox is desperately trying to pull all the strings to try to get another major motorsports on their network. Now, personally, I am not a fan if this happens. Now, according to Marshall Pruitt from Racer.com in his mailbag questions this past week, he had stated that these talks have kind of died down, but Mark Miles is saying that they're getting close having these deals done. I really hope that Fox does not win the bid to get the rights for IndyCar. NBC has done absolute amazing and a really good job, in my opinion, with their coverage for many, many years. If you look at Fox's coverage with NASCAR especially, they have done a horrendous and really bad job. They've had some okay broadcasts this year, but for the most part, they have absolutely struggled. To me, if they go to Fox, that being IndyCar, I think it's going to be a major and a massive loss for them, and I really hope and pray they make the right decision here and they do not move IndyCar over to Fox. It likely could happen, unfortunately, and it's just really disappointing that it might end up happening because personally, like I said, I want IndyCar to stay on NBC. Even though I think he definitely won't be covering races next year if he stays because he's going to be focused with NASCAR, I just think it would be a bad decision overall if IndyCar left NBC and went to Fox. But unfortunately, it does sound like that there is a chance and a strong possibility that this could end up happening. And to me, I think it would be a really bad move for the sport overall if this did in fact end up happening. And now we're going ahead, jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Indy 500 qualifying. Now, we're going to talk about Kyle Larson in just a second, but we first need to talk about Indy 500 qualifying. Let's first go through the last chance qualifier and the last row qualifier. He became very, very close at the end. You have Marcus Ericsson, Nolan Siegel, Catherine Lake, and Graham Rahal all fighting for the final transfer spot. Marcus Ericsson, who of course is a 2022 Indy 500 winner, the fact he was in the final row shootout is absolutely crazy. Luckily, he had a good enough time to make it in. It would be 32nd. At the end, it came down to Nolan Siegel and Graham Rahal, and Graham just had to wait. Nolan Siegel gave everything he had to try to make this year's Indy 500, but unfortunately after crashing on lap number 2, he sadly got bumped and will be the only driver that will not make this year's Indianapolis 500. A massive and huge tough break for him considering Nolan had gotten better every single run and that team had gotten faster, especially throughout the week. They've been struggling. They were down to 226, 227. They got that car into 229 range. They gave everything he had, and I think in the future Nolan Siegel is going to come back and win one of these Indy 500s. He gave everything. I feel bad for him, but he did an absolutely amazing and incredible job all week and improved throughout the week as well. As for the Fast 12 and Fast 6, Scott McLaughlin has won the pole for the 2024 Indianapolis 500. Scott McLaughlin has been extremely fast. Team Penske swept the front row. McLaughlin starting first. I believe Will Power is starting second. And Joseph Newgarden, I believe, is starting third. This is the first time we've had Penske lock out the front row since 1988. And guess who won that? A Penske car with Rick Mears, if I remember correctly. I think that Scott McLaughlin has a really good chance to win the Indy 500. He's been extremely consistent. He's still kind of my pick at the moment right now. I'll do my picks later this week to tell you who I think won. But congratulations, Scott McLaughlin. That 3 cars look great, and Penske's been really, really fast. It doesn't shock me or surprising to see Scott McLaughlin be as quick, as fast as he's been. Congratulations to Penske on getting it done and getting the win of the pole. We'll see if they can translate that to winning the Indy 500 in 2024. And now we're going ahead, jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Chris Buescher and Tyler Reddick. Now, if you watched the NASCAR Cup Series race at Darlington Raceway last week, you saw what happened between Chris Buescher and Tyler Reddick. They both were battling very, very hard for the win and the race lead, and Tyler Reddick sent it going to about 10 or 15 laps to go in the race, and Tyler Reddick got into Chris Buescher. They hit the outside wall, and they get a ton of damage. Chris Buescher justifiably was not very happy with Tyler Reddick after the situation and went up and confronted him. Then basically Tyler Reddick said, I'm sorry for what happened. I messed up. I screwed up there. And after Buescher, like I said, I don't have a winter sticker on my car. Now, in the media center this past week, Tyler Reddick spoke on the situation. He reflects on what happened at Darlington, and he also says that it's just him going for the win and the victory. And Bubba Wallace, by the way, actually agreed with what Tyler Reddick said right there. To me, when I look at the situation, it seems like even Chris Buescher, by the way, actually spoke and said that they've talked after what happened, and they said everything is good between both of them, which is really, really good to see. Look, I think Tyler Reddick just sent it there. He's made some mistakes on the racetrack. He did that with 2 or 3 laps to go. I don't think that Chris Buescher would have been as upset, but Chris Buescher had a lot of heartbreak, and he's been having a lot of speed as well. And I understand Tyler Reddick basically defending himself here, which he really didn't defend himself. He basically said, I made a mistake, I effed up, and that was on me for sure. I'm glad to see that they both have talked and they're not on bad terms going forward, because I think both drivers respect each other. They've raced each other with a lot of respect over the years, and I think both drivers are just putting up the effort, and they want to go out there and do as well as they can. To me, I know Reddick wants to get another win, but I also understand Chris Buescher's frustration in that situation. To me, I'm glad to see both have talked after the situation, and I'm glad to see that both can move on from what happened, and now they can both focus on trying to go win races like the Coke 600, which you know both Reddick and Buescher are probably going to be fast at, considering RFK has been quick, and Reddick was really fast in last year's Coke 600 as well. I think he's got a great chance and opportunity to get it done in the Coke 600 in 2024. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Chicagoland Speedway. Now, it was reported by Mark Rabalos, who's a fellow reporter in, I believe, the NASCAR industry. He reported that he was flying over Chicagoland. And if you take a look at Chicagoland Speedway from these photos that surface, the track absolutely looks ready to go. Obviously, after a very impressive race at Kansas Speedway, many fans and drivers, including myself, have stated that we need to return to Chicagoland Speedway. And I've been saying this for a few years now, back since 2022 or 23, that the next-gen car would absolutely excel at Chicagoland Speedway. Chicagoland race is very similar to Kansas. And in my opinion right now, Kansas Speedway is the best track in the next-gen era, maybe the best track in NASCAR currently at the moment. If we put these next-gen cars at Chicagoland Speedway, the racing will absolutely be phenomenal and amazing. And the fact that NASCAR is likely not going to have it on the schedule in 2025 is a great shame. There is a chance it could happen in 2026, and if we keep pushing desperately hard, especially if how great the next-gen car is, if we keep pushing very, very hard for this track to return, I think the racing would be great. There is a chance it could happen in 2026. I mentioned that because the Chicago Street Course contract only goes through 2025. They could get extended until 2027 or 2028 for Chicago Street Course, but I think if I'm looking at Chicago right now, we need to get this track back on the Cup Series schedule. The racing is going to be phenomenal if it ends up happening, and I think it'll put on an excellent and a great show. So I'm desperately hoping they make the right choice, they make the right decision, and in the future, they go back to Chicagoland Speedway, because in my opinion, this track is phenomenal. It's incredible. They've got the track ready to go. The facility looks great now. I think it would be great, and I really hope and pray they make the right and absolutely great decision to return to Chicagoland Speedway in the not-so-distant future. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Kyle Larson. Now, I did a video talking about Kyle Larson on the channel a couple of days ago. Go ahead and check that out. Kyle Larson is obviously attempting a double this year. He'll be attempting the race in the Indy 500 and the Coco 600 on the same day. And I was a little worried early in day number one that he was going to be in trouble after some of the engine issues that came into play. But I shouldn't have been as worried because Kyle Larson not only qualified into the Indy 500, he made the Fast 12. Not only that, he made the Fast 6 and will start in 5th position in this year's Indianapolis 500. This is an absolutely monumental, amazing, and incredible accomplishment. Because not only does Kyle Larson have a chance to maybe get a top 10 in the Indy 500, he has a great opportunity to win the Indy 500 this year. Kyle Larson, in my opinion, is maybe the most versatile driver out in the world currently at the moment. I don't think there's another driver right now that could go into a Cup car, then transfer into Indy car, then transfer back to a Cup car, and instantly get up to speed as quick as Kyle Larson has gotten up to speed. The fact he was so fast in an Arrow McLaren car, we know the Arrow McLaren cars have been super quick this week, but the fact he instantly got into an Arrow McLaren car and got up to speed super quickly and got faster during qualifying is absolutely amazing and incredible. I'm not saying that he is going to win the Indy 500 this year because I still think the Penske cars are super fast. But the fact that Kyle Larson beat so many former Indy 500 winners like Alex Palou and Scott Dixon, and was up there with the Penske cars, is phenomenal. He was the third fastest non-Penske car, and it's just incredible to see what Kyle Larson has accomplished. This guy can get into anything and instantly pick it up very, very quickly. I'm so happy for Kyle Larson. It's an amazing accomplishment for him, and congratulations to him on making the Indy 500. I think he doesn't only have a chance to win it, because I think he's got a great chance to win it, but it's going to be tough to beat those Penske guys. Nonetheless, congratulations to Kyle Larson on making the Indy 500 this year, and he'll be starting in fifth. Fifth place, which, by the way, is a record for the rookies, by the way. So congratulations, Kyle Larson, on making this year's Indy 500. It's a really huge deal. Congratulations to him on making this year's Indianapolis 500, who'll have a great chance and opportunity to win the Indy 500 this year, which I think he's got a good chance to get it done. And now we're going ahead, jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Kevin Harvick. Now, Kevin Harvick, of course, was substituting for Kyle Larson. As we know, he was at Indianapolis. And Kevin Harvick got behind the wheel of the number 5 car for Hendrick Motorsports earlier today, or yesterday, I think it was, for qualifying for the All-Star Challenge, and on Friday, and did a very solid job behind the wheel, and was asked by the media about what was different about being in a Hendrick car compared to a Stewart-Haas car. And Kevin Harvick threw shots at Stewart-Haas Racing. He called them out by basically saying, seeing the owner twice is nice. Obviously, a lot of people have been talking about Stewart-Haas Racing, and we're going to talk about him. But we know that Tony Stewart and Gene Haas have not been around the shop as much, which is where I think this call is coming from. We know that Gene Haas has been focused on his Formula One program, and Tony Stewart really hasn't been at the shop as much, so I will say Tony and Kevin are very good friends. So if there's anybody that Kevin Harvick is probably calling out, it is Gene Haas. And you look at Hendrick, for example. They're very helpful with their drivers, and they're very helpful of getting a driver like Kevin Harvick up to speed. And we saw the speed that Kevin Harvick showed, especially on the long run in practice yesterday. And seeing Kevin Harvick back behind the Cup car, by the way, is incredible. But like I said, we've talked so much about the fact that we've seen issues with SHR creeping up. And while they've shown a lot more pace and speed in recent months, they still have a lot of issues they absolutely need to resolve and get together and fix. To me, it does surprise or shock me to see that Kevin Harvick is calling out SHR. Because you look at what Kevin Harvick, and we all know many years ago, right back in 2016, there were rumblings and rumors that Kevin Harvick was not going to be leaving Chevrolet and was going to stay when Lee Chevrolet is going to go to Hendrick Motorsports, take over the 5 car, which was struggling that season. That was all the way back to 2016. But obviously that did not end up happening, and he stayed loyal to SHR. And while at the beginning of the time at Ford, it really didn't backfire, as time progressed and went on, we saw them get worse and worse, and Kevin Harvick was absolutely carrying Stewart-Haas Racing in a big way. While Kevin Harvick was competing for wins and victories last year, the other 3 cars were struggling. Chase Briscoe last year, despite being better this year, Chase Briscoe was immensely struggling. And he got a big penalty nonetheless. To me, when you look at SHR, they've gotten better for sure, but Kevin Harvick calling him out isn't a massive surprise or shock, considering that we've seen a lot of struggles from that program in recent seasons. So it doesn't surprise or shock me to see them calling it out. It's not a massive surprise. And like I said, I'm not shocked or surprised to see the frustration from Kevin Harvick on the lack of knowledge and Ben not being there. In my honest opinion, doesn't surprise or shock me. And now we're going ahead, jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Richard Childress Racing. As Richard Childress Racing is teasing an announcement for tomorrow, May 21st. Now, initially, when I saw this, I was thinking maybe a Cheddar's patriotic scheme, considering the fact that Cheddar's is going to be sponsoring Kyle Busch, I believe, at the Coke 600, because they did it last year with Kyle Busch and also Tyler Reddick a few years ago. But I actually think this is a little different. There has been a little bit of chatter and rumblings and rumors circulating on Reddit, and I believe from the NASCAR Rumor Nostalgia page, that they might be making an announcement that Kyle Busch could be running in the NASCAR Xfinity Series. Kyle Busch last year ran select race with Kaulig Racing and ran 4 of the 5 scheduled starts because that other start was at Charlotte before unfortunately got rained out to Sunday. And Kyle Busch, of course, was focused on the Coke 600 at the time. And then they had to run the race on Monday as well. And I believe they had Justin Haley substituting for him during that race. But while Kyle Busch wasn't bad, he was not very good in that race. RCR has shown a lot of pace and speed in the Xfinity Series, and they've looked to be one of the teams to beat so far this year. Austin Hill scored 2 victories, and Jesse Love has had some great pace and speed. Some believe that the number that Kyle Busch is going to run is a number 33 if this ends up happening, and I believe Rebel Bourbon could be the potential sponsor as well, according to NASCAR Rumor Nostalgia. If Kyle Busch runs in the 33 Xfinity car or the number 3 Xfinity Series car, that is going to be absolutely wild because Kyle Busch, of course, has had issues with drivers at RCR in the past when he's driving for JGR and Hendrick, of course. But it would be really fun to see Kyle Busch back in the Xfinity Series running a couple select starts. I don't know how many races are scheduled for Kyle if he is running Xfinity. But like I said, I think it's just so fun and cool to see the fact and that there is a potential possibility that we are going to see Kyle Busch back in the Xfinity Series. But I think there's also a really good chance that this is going to be a paint scheme. I think this could be a paint scheme. Maybe it's also for a paint scheme for Will Brown. So I don't think Will Brown's paint scheme has been revealed for Sonoma. So this could also just be his paint scheme because they revealed Cam Waters' paint scheme from RFK Racing not too long ago. So that could also be what is going on. But to me, I think this could be a potential possibility as well that we see Kyle Busch make a return. And I would absolutely love to see Kyle Busch come back and race in the NASCAR Xfinity Series because I think he would do a very solid and good job in that. And I think it'd be fun for the sport as well if it was to end up happening. So we'll see what ends up happening, see what the announcement is. I think there's a chance it's going to be an announcement for Kyle Busch running in the Xfinity Series again, maybe for a few starts, but it also could be them just running a one-off paint scheme for Will Brown because, like I said, we are going to see Will Brown make his Cup debut pretty soon. So we'll see what happens, and we'll see what ends up taking place, and whether Kyle Busch will be on the wheel or will be something else. It will be announced likely tomorrow morning. And if it's a big story, we'll cover here on this channel. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Kyle Busch once again. Now, it was reported by Dustin Law from NASCAR and NBC that there's a lot of talk about the double. We know that Kyle Larson, of course, running the double, run the Indy 500 in the Coke 600, and we already talked about the fact that Kyle Larson is starting in 5th position in this year's Indy 500. Well, there's another driver that's been rumored who's been wanting to do the Indy 500 for a very long time, and that, of course, is Kyle Busch. Now, Richard Childress was asked about Kyle Busch potentially running the Indy 500, and Richard Childress says that it's Kyle Busch's decision if he wants to run the double or not. But if Kyle Busch wanted to run the double in the future, it would basically be something that he would support and would definitely love to see. Now, obviously, there was a lot of opportunities for Kyle Busch to run the Indy 500 many years ago. Back, I believe it was in 2017 and 2018. Kyle Busch had an opportunity and chance to run the Indy 500 with Team Penske. But unfortunately, at the time, because Kyle Busch was driving for Joe Gibbs Racing and Kyle Busch was at the peak of his career, Kyle Busch was unfortunately denied the opportunity and chance to run the Indianapolis 500 with Team Penske. There were rumors about 2 years ago that Kyle Busch was going to run the Indy 500 potentially as early as 2023 or even this year, but unfortunately those deals fell through because I think they lost the funding and the sponsorship to run that. And then, of course, his opportunity, which would then go to Kyle Larson, who now is running the Indy 500. Now, who could Kyle Busch run for if he was running the Indy 500? Because personally, I would love to see Kyle Busch run the Indy 500 in 2025. Well, I think there's a couple opportunities. If Kyle Larson decides not to run the Indy 500 in 2025, I think Kyle Busch would be the perfect guy to go with. Or I would love to see both of them run at the same time. I thought there was going to be a chance of possibility that it was going to happen this year, but eventually Callum Ilott got the seat. Because I know Kyle Busch at least had been trying to get an Indy 500 ride for this year. But sadly, like I said, that ended up falling through. You also have Justin Marks. Now, Denny Hamlin was on Fox Sports for the Cup Series North Wilkesboro race took place, and Denny Hamlin said that he was actually asked by Justin Marks and was asked by the garage about whether or not he could run the Indy 500, but Denny Hamlin is not interested in running it. Justin Marks, it's no secret, is wanting to run the Indy 500, and he had been talking, I believe, to multiple organizations like I think it was Dry Ryan Bull Racing with Cusick Motorsports about maybe running a car in the Indy 500. We know Trackhouse is getting versatile. They're running in MotoGP, and we know they've been interested for the last year or so of running the Indy 500. I think Shane Van Gisbergen also could in the future run the Indy 500 for Trackhouse if it ends up happening, but if not him, I would absolutely love to see Kyle Busch get the chance and opportunity to run the Indy 500 with a team like that. Because I think Kyle Busch will be very, very solid. Now, I don't think that Kyle Busch could go in there right now as much as he's been dropping off a little bit of performance. I don't know if Kyle Busch could go in there and win instantly like Kyle Larson has a chance to. I think if you put Kyle Busch a few years ago and run the Indy 500, I think he'd be more and more competitive and would have a better chance and opportunity. Nonetheless, I hope it ends up happening because, like I said, I want to see Kyle Busch run the Indy 500 before he retires. We saw his brother Kurt run it, and Kurt was very solid and very successful where he finished in 6th. And I think if Kyle Busch runs the Indy 500, I think it'd be really fun for it to happen. So we'll see if it ends up happening ever, but we know they're trying to push relatively hard to make it happen, and we'll see in the future if Kyle Busch does, in fact, decide to go ahead and run the Indy 500. I would love to see Kyle Busch have the chance and the opportunity to maybe run the Indy 500 in the not-so-distant future. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Kaulig Racing. Now, over the course of the last couple weeks, there's been a lot of rumblings and rumors circulating that Kaulig Racing could potentially be merging with Trackhouse Racing in 2025. Obviously, Kaulig and Trackhouse have very, very close alliance, and many people, including myself, had speculated earlier last week that they were potentially going to merge. However, Chris Rice was on SiriusXM NASCAR Radio, I believe on Wednesday or Thursday, and he stated that that is not the case. He says that Kaulig Racing is not merging with Trackhouse Racing in 2025. He's denying those rumors and those claims. Now, he does say he tells a lot of people and tries to create a lot of diversions, so they're talking about him, which to me is a little bit of a question why you're trying to create diversions. I really don't know at this point. Obviously, like I said a second ago, a big reason why many of us have been thinking that they may merge with Trackhouse Racing is because of their tight alliance they have. Shane Van Gisbergen is currently driving the number 97 car for Kaulig Racing, and Daniel Suarez, Justin Marks, and Ross Chastain have driven for Kaulig Racing in the past. One reason why a lot of people have also said that they could be merging is because of the struggles from Kaulig Racing. Kaulig Racing has not been fast this year. They have struggled for the most part. Outside of Shane Van Gisbergen and AJ Allmendinger forming solidly this year at times, that 16 car has not been very fast and not very good. There's even rumors speculating that the 16 charter has already been sold over to Trackhouse Racing. Like I said, with the tight alliance they have, many think that they've already sold the charter at this particular point. I think it would make a lot of sense for Kaulig and Trackhouse to merge, but also it would make sense for them because they could still keep going around next year, but there also is a chance they do sell a charter. Brad Keselowski basically stated on pre-race earlier tonight that charters right now are going for around $25 to $30 million, which that's actually a little bit less than what they used to be because we know that Live Fast Motorsports sold their charter to Spire and Trackhouse for $40 million, so that value has dropped about 25% to around 30% from what it had been last year. And obviously, like I mentioned with Kaulig, I think if Kaulig wanted to keep their program going in Xfinity, it would make a lot of sense if they sold their charter. Their Xfinity program used to be elite as well. Go back to 2021. Justin Haley won a race or two. We saw Allmendinger win a ton of races, win the regular season championship, and made the Final Four. And Jeb Burton won a race at Talladega. Since that time, their Xfinity program has been getting worse and worse every year. AJ Allmendinger is outside the top 5 in the points currently. Shane Van Gisbergen, while yes, he's basically a rookie, he's sitting 15, 27 points below. And Josh Williams has been a disaster. If Kaulig Racing wanted to be a lot smarter, they would sell a charter, in my opinion, to make their program a lot better. Because like I said, their program right now is just not fast. They're struggling immensely in Xfinity. They're off the pace. They're not as fast as Junior Motorsports. They're not as fast as JGR. And they're not certainly as fast as RCR. If Kaulig Racing wanted to get back to the top and wanted to become better, they could use that money they get from selling a charter to Trackhouse, because I know Justin Marks is really pushing to get charters at the moment right now for his team to expand. It would make a lot of sense for them to sell a charter or merge with Trackhouse Racing to make their program a lot better. I get why you don't want to sell it because you want to stay in the Cup Series. And maybe they do decide to stay in the Cup Series going into next year. But instead of just, being two full-time cars, they downsize to one full-time entry. At that point, what do? Do you keep Daniel Hemrick in the 31? Or do you put someone like a Daniel Suarez in there or SVG in there? That could be a possibility because we know Zane Smith is looking to go full-time Cup Series racing next season. To me, I do think the Kaulig Racing, like I said, could end up merging, but I don't know if it's going to happen at this point. We'll have to wait and see what happens in regards to that and see if they do end up merging going into next year. But as of right now, Chris Rice thinks that they're not merging. I think there's a chance that he's right. We'll have to wait and see what happens if what Chris Rice says does in fact end up coming true. It could end up happening though. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next major story of today's episode as we're talking about the Kyle Busch and Ricky Stenhouse Jr. fight. Now, I did a video yesterday talking about this on the channel. So let's go back to the beginning before the punches and the shoves started happening. On lap number 1 of the All-Star race at North Wilkesboro, Ricky Stenhouse Jr. got very, very aggressive and sent it 3 wide between Michael McDowell and Kyle Busch. And it looked at the beginning that Ricky Stenhouse Jr. and Kyle Busch had contact, forcing Kyle Busch into the outside wall. But after the replays were shown, Ricky Stenhouse Jr. never had contact with Kyle Busch. But Kyle Busch was not buying it. Because after that happened, Kyle Busch went into the back of Ricky Stenhouse Jr. lap number 2, retaliated on him, and dumped him into the back of the outside wall. This would pretty much end Ricky Stenhouse Jr.'s night as he would end up going to the garage. But before he went to the garage, he actually stopped his car on pit road in the A-Team's pit box and went up and talked to Randall Burnett and Andy Petrie and basically told them, I'm going to be prepared. I'm going to be waiting since the crossover gate at North Wilkesboro was not going to be open. Then Ricky Stenhouse Jr. spoke to Jamie Little and many reporters in the industry and told them that he was going to be waiting for Kyle Busch since the gate wasn't going to be open up for a very, very long time. And he said that grandfather, basically Richard Chose, better be holding his watch for him. And then we also saw Kyle Busch get in the back of Ty Gibbs. And Kyle took responsibility for getting in the back of Gibbs. After the race concluded, Kyle Busch and Ricky Stenhouse Jr. confronted each other. And Ricky Stenhouse Jr., what's funny about this, was waiting there for Kyle Busch to get there. They had some words were exchanged, and initially looked like it was a little bit of hustle, but also a very civil conversation with pit crew members watching. But then, pandemonium started. After all the conversation continued, Ricky Stenhouse Jr. said, watch the replay, and Ricky Stenhouse Jr. throws a punch. Kyle Busch tries to throw a punch back, but then Ricky Stenhouse Jr.'s father starts coming in. You've got pit crew members that are shoving each other around. You got them getting pissed off at each other. You've got JTG members and RCR members trying to grab Ricky Stenhouse Jr.'s father. And Ricky Stenhouse Jr.'s father basically said he never touched him. And there were punches thrown. Kyle Busch then basically said after the situation, I don't care. Come fight me. I don't care. We both still suck. And Andy Petrie right there just looking really shocked that Kyle Busch said that he basically sucks. After all the stuff concluded, Kyle Busch spoke to the media and basically said that I'm tired of getting wrecked. I've been wrecked so many times because of the aggressiveness in the lower series, especially in the upper series as well, because everyone runs at each other because these next-gen cars are very, very hard, and Kyle Busch justifiably was not very happy. But Ricky Stenhouse Jr., after the fight ended up taking place, he basically said some pretty interesting jabs at Kyle Busch once again, and basically said that Kyle Busch just has not been as fast and is not as good as he used to be, which was like, damn, Ricky Stenhouse Jr. calling out Kyle Busch like this. Now, what are my thoughts on the situation and the fight? First of all, that is a real fight. That's not like what happened with not Ricky Stenhouse Jr., Chris Buescher and Tyler Reddick last week. This is a real fight. Real punches were thrown and shoves were made between the pit crew members. To me, I think Ricky Stenhouse Jr. had every right to be frustrated and upset. I get why Kyle Busch is upset too, do not get me wrong, considering the fact that Kyle Busch has been roughed up by the younger drivers in the series. But Ricky Stenhouse Jr. just got dumped by Kyle Busch for absolutely no reason. When you look at the replay of a situation, Kyle Busch clearly was not hit by Stenhouse. Again, it was probably the dirty air that caused it because for some reason on the short tracks, we have dirty air problems with this car. To me, I think that Kyle Busch might have overreacted on Stenhouse, and I think Stenhouse may have absolutely made the right call to go after Kyle Busch. I hope NASCAR, though, at the same time, makes the right decision here, and they do not penalize Kyle Busch or Stenhouse for this. I do think Stenhouse could receive a penalty, however, for parking his car in Kyle Busch's pit stall. That might result in a penalty, unfortunately, but to me, it would be a bad move and a major mistake if we saw Kyle Busch or Stenhouse get a penalty. Fights make the sport. We've got NFL journalists on Twitter especially who are talking about this. Because the All-Star race, let's be honest, the race itself was just not very good. And this is the big talking point coming out of this. To me, Kyle Busch and Stenhouse fighting is crazy. You had Ricky Stenhouse Jr. basically in his shorts going after Kyle Busch and fighting him after the race. Again, though, I get why Stenhouse is upset and frustrated about the situation and getting wrecked. I think he had every right to be mad. Stenhouse also said it's because Kyle Busch has been running his mouth about him over the years, which is true. Kyle Busch has been running his mouth about Stenhouse for many years, and I think that it's been boiling, and I think he had enough about that situation there. To me, I think Kyle Busch had every right to be frustrated about getting hit, but at the same token, same time, Stenhouse was in the right, in my opinion, and I think the fight is absolutely wild. This is going to be one of the biggest moments of the year, and the first true fight, in my opinion, is probably when Ross Chastain and Noah Gragson had their fight and confrontation. That one was definitely a wild and crazy fight for sure, in my honest opinion. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the first of two major stories in today's episode as we're talking about Junior Motorsports. Now, we talked about Junior Motorsports earlier this week, but Dale Jr. was most recently on SiriusXM NASCAR Radio doing media tours surrounding him going on Amazon and TNT in 2025 as he'll be a broadcaster there. And actually, Dave Moody from SiriusXM NASCAR Radio spoke to Dale Jr. about the possibility of maybe investing in a charter or bringing his Cup team up in 2025. Dale Jr. said that they're looking at their options for the 2025 season, and they're actually a little interested in maybe joining next year. Dale Jr. says they have a couple potential options. One, they could invest in a charter from an organization in the Cup Series and buy up one of the charters. Or the second option is they bring their Cup Series team all together up in 2025. We have talked a lot about Junior Motorsports potentially joining the Cup Series for many, many years, going all the way back to 2021 when after Josh Berry won his first career NASCAR Xfinity Series race, Dale Jr. has stated that Adam Stern and many reporters in the industry that he had interest in going Cup Series racing in the future. Obviously, with charter prices skyrocketing and going up, though, that's been one of the big key reasons why they have not made the move. They came close to going up in 2022 and 2023, and there even been a lot of talks now that they're one of the teams that's interested in maybe getting one of the Stewart-Haas racing charters for 2025. But what's been the big thing that's been holding them up? Well, obviously, the charter agreement is also still not finalized. Though many are expecting that charter agreement is going to get finalized in the not-so-distant future. Let's go to the first possibility about Dale Jr. potentially just investing in a current Cup Series team. Well, he could invest in just buying a charter from a team like Stewart-Haas Racing. Or there is another option out there, and is maybe buying an ownership stake in JTG Daugherty Racing and being with Brad Daugherty and Gordon Smith next season. We do know that Tad and Jody Geschecter are likely going to be leaving that organization at the end of this year. They're no longer listed as team owners for the organization, and we know that Kroger more than likely is going to be going over to Joe Gibbs Racing along with Tad and Jody Geschecter in 2025, which means that would mean that could open up the doors and possibility for them to work with the 47 charter next year. That would make a lot of sense. This also can mean that there could be a new name change for this team. Instead of JTG Daugherty, it could be Junior Daugherty Racing or Junior Daugherty Racing. That could be a possibility as well if Brad Daugherty decides to stick around. The other option is bringing their team up to the Cup Series, and that could be a big possibility for them next year. And I think it's a lot closer this year. I mentioned this a little bit ago, but it's being rumored the charter money is dropping a little bit from what it used to be. We know the Live Fast Motorsports sold their charter for $40 million to Spire Motorsports, and that charter money has dropped down to $25 to $30 million. So it would be less investment. But we know that Dale Jr. is a little bit stringy on money, and it's hard for him to make a move to go in there. But if the Junior Motorsports, let's say, decides to finally pull the plug and are going for it, they decide to go with the gas and try to go for it, I think that it's very possible that it could happen. And they've got drivers in the Xfinity Series that are ready. Sam Mayer, in my opinion, has been doing a really good job in the Xfinity Series. He'd be a good driver to go after. You've got, of course, Sammy Smith, brings the Pipeline J sponsorship. Kyle Weatherman is driving for DGM Racing. I thought there'd be a chance for him to maybe drive for Junior Motorsports. That could still be a possibility in the future. You've got Anthony Alfredo, who's driving for Hendry Motorsports in their simulator program. You've also got other drivers like maybe not Matt DiBenedetto, maybe they get Carl Lawrence out of retirement, I don't know. But there's other drivers like Connor Zilic as well. Connor Zilic under contract with Trackhouse, but he's going to drive for Junior Motorsports in the Xfinity Series. You've got other drivers that are major possibilities here. But I think there is that chance that if they could try to pull it, they could go after it. And I really hope Junior decides to run a Cup Series team, because I think Junior Motorsports in the Cup Series would absolutely be a massive win and a huge moment for not just NASCAR, for motorsports across the globe. Having Dale Jr. represent a Cup Series team would be huge, and I really hope it ends up happening, because I think it would not only be massive and huge for the sport, but I think having maybe the biggest team out there, because I think Junior Motorsports is maybe the most well-known team outside of Hendrick Motorsports, having them, because I know Rick Hendrick probably would have to take association away, which I think would be very, very easy, but to me, it would make a lot of sense, and I really hope they make the right decision here, and I really do hope we do get to see Junior Motorsports in the not-so-distant future in the Cup Series, because I certainly think they would be a very solid and a very successful organization if it was to end up happening. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the final major story of today's episode, as we're talking about Stewart-Haas Racing. Now, we've talked a lot about Stewart-Haas Racing over the course of the last few weeks. The reason being is because the uncertainty around Stewart-Haas Racing and how that will affect silly season. Stewart-Haas Racing is the epidemic and the center of what's going to happen in the silly season. Early in the silly season, it was reported by Adam Stern that Stewart-Haas Racing might end up selling one charter. Why? Because they're no longer a Tier 1 Ford organization after this season, and Mark Rushbrook has declined to comment in regards to that recently. Then a few weeks ago, it became reported that Stewart-Haas Racing could sell up to not only one charter, but two charters. And then about 2 weeks ago, it was rumored by people like Breakheart and many people in the industry that SHR could merge with Front Row Motorsports. Especially Michael and Down now going to Spire Motorsports. Many speculated that Front Row Motorsports could be merging with them. But now in the last week or so, there's been a lot of chatter and rumors and rumblings that Stewart-Haas Racing could altogether be shutting down their Cup Series program and their program altogether and selling off all their assets to multiple organizations and teams. This will not only affect a lot of employees at the organization that they shut down, but this will affect the drivers at the organization as a whole. We'll get to the drivers who could be affected here in just a second, but let's talk about SHR. Yes, they are a lot quicker right now than where they were last year. There's no denying that. They've shown a lot more pace and a lot more speed. However, they lost a lot of funding in their sponsorship. They lost an opportunity to get Kyle Larson back in 2021. Tony was desperately begging to get Kyle Larson. Kyle Busch had an opportunity to go there. He was one of the drivers that was rumored for the 10 car at the time at the end of 2022. We now know Eric Almirola came back and Kyle was not given the chance. We know that Zane Smith and Michael McDowell years ago were in the running. And I imagine drivers like Haley Deegan were also in the running as well. They weren't given a chance and opportunity. Instead, they chose Noah Gragson. Now, don't get me wrong. SHR, Noah Gragson, Chase Briscoe, Josh Green, Ryan Preece have all had flashes of brilliance. But they're not at the level of what Kevin Harvick was accomplishing at the team and organization. That is a definite fact. Also, Tony Stewart and Gene Haas are not around as much. We know Gene is focused on F1 and getting the Haas program back up to par, and we do know that Tony Stewart's focusing on NHRA, which is why these rumors continue to circulate. Now, what happens to those charters? We'll talk about that in now. I think two of those charters are going to go to Front Row Motorsports. Front Row is a Tier 1 organization. We know they're going to be potentially a 4-car team next year. I think two of those go there, and that could be a place for drivers like Noah Gragson and Riley Herbst and Josh Berry and even Chase Briscoe next year. I think one could go to RFK. RFK's interested in expanding. They've got drivers in the Ford pipeline like Riley Herbst, Cole Custer, even Haley Deegan, and Matt Benedetto in the Ford group right now, and even Frankie Muniz as well, and Cam Waters as well, because they're looking to expand. You've also got 2311 Racing. It's no secret that 2311 Racing is really looking to expand. I think Corey Howard would be the front runner if they were to expand to another car, but I also look at other drivers like Chandler Smith, maybe Sheldon Creed, Eric Almirola, and maybe get Carl Edwards or Kurt Busch out of retirement to drive in the seat, or maybe someone else that's lower in the series, like maybe a Taylor Gray at this point. And you also got other organizations like Trackhouse. Trackhouse is looking to expand. I think they could be in the running to get one or two charters. Again, you've got Washington and Daniel Suarez that are in the contract currently at the moment. But you've got Zane Smith and Shane Van Gisbergen who need seats for Cup next year, who could be there. And then Connor Zilic in the future could make the move. Legacy's another team that's been mentioned. Even Junior Motorsports could get one as well. But that's not the only piece. You've got to look at the drivers. What happens to the drivers currently driving for Stewart-Haas Racing if Stewart-Haas Racing ends up shutting down? Let's begin by talking about Chase Briscoe. There is a chance that Briscoe could go to front row next year, but I think there's also a chance and possibility that we could see him end up going to the Wood Brothers. There's a lot of rumors and chatter that Harrison Burton is not going to be back to the Wood Brothers next season. He has been struggling immensely with the Wood Brothers in 2024, and he said this going into the year, that this year was going to be his last chance and opportunity to really perform. Harrison has been struggling immensely in that 21 car, and I think that car is a lot better than what Harrison Burton's shown. I think that Chase Briscoe would do an amazing job and work wonders with the 21 organization if he ends up driving for them next season. I think he's in the front running, take over to 21. Josh Berry, I think he goes to front row next year. I think Ronnie Chose and Josh Berry are a package deal, and I think both of them will end up going over to the front row group next year. You've also got to talk now about Noah Gragson. Noah Gragson, there's a lot of chatter that he could potentially go to this front row NSHR merger, but also there's a couple other teams looking at him. JGR is one of them potentially, but because of the Toyota issues, I don't think he goes there. But I think Trackhouse and RCR are looking at him right now because DBC said this last week that there are teams that are looking for him at this moment to pick up. I think that 3-car could be a possibility. Austin Dillon has been struggling immensely this year, and Kyle Busch just seems to be a little frustrated as well with RCR. And as much as I think Austin will be great takeover to 3, I think Noah Gragson with his Bass Pro Shops connection, I think he'd be a front runner to go there next year and do much better. And Trackhouse likes winners, and I think he could be a really good candidate there. But he also could stick around and go there. Then you've got Ryan Preece. Unfortunately, Ryan Preece, I think his future is very uncertain. I would not be surprised or shocked if he does go to this front row merger, but I also think he might be out of the Cup Series altogether. Ryan Preece does not bring a lot of funding and a lot of sponsorship, and he's been struggling at points so far this year. So I think if they do lose it, I think Ryan Preece more than likely will be out of the Cup right at least full time. He maybe goes back down to the Xfinity Series in a Ford or a Chevy camp. At this point, I do think that SHR is going to be gone at the end of the year. As much as I do truly want to see SHR back in the Cup Series next year with all the rumors and all the rumblings until we get a definitive answer from SHR and what the team is clearly doing next year, I do think they're going to be gone at the end of the year, unfortunately. There's just no performance coming out of that. Well, there's good performance, but there really is unknown. Many expect they're going to be gone. They've already sold charters from what people have been saying. You always hear these rumors. I truly think that there will be officially an announcement soon, and I think that Stewart-Haas Racing is going to be shutting down at the end of the year. Even Noah Gragson and Chase Briscoe spoke to me this week, and Josh Berry said he's fighting for a job. So I think Stewart-Haas Racing is going to shut down, sadly, at the end of the year. I think one of the charters goes to 2311 as 2011 looks to expand and help people out like Marco Jordan over there at this point, and of course Bubba Wallace and Tyler Reddick. And I think that Trackhouse could get one, try to get that Rebel connection for SVG at this point too. And I think that Front Row gets 2 of the charters, and I think RFK could get one. We'll see what happens, but I think SHR will be gone at the end of the season. So that is going to be today's NASCAR news and motorsports news video. I want to thank you guys for watching. Please subscribe to the channel, notifications on, so if I win a video, it does go live on my channel. Follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and support on Patreon as well. Links below that, and comment your thoughts below on today's video. You think Stewart-Haas Racing shutting down? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And what are your thoughts about Junior Motorsports? And do you think they'll go Cup Racing? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. We might have another video dropping on the channel as we have reached, I believe, over 1 million views on this channel, which I thank you all for the support on that. Tomorrow we're going to have an entry-list video on the Coke 600, and we're going to have a lot of great content dropping. We've got Indy 500 race picks, and we've got a lot of awesome content dropping coming on the channel soon. So anyways, like I said, I want to thank you guys for watching today's episode. I'll see you guys next time for more great, awesome NASCAR content and other motorsports content on the channel like this. Take care, everybody.